gonna record it. In that way, when you get all stoked and pumped up about doing this trip and you want to send it to your fishing buddy, you can send him the recording, although it's not quite as good as being here in real life. And if any of the Reds guys are on, will you let me know, just so I kind of know who's on from Reds? I don't see any of the guys on yet, but I'm gonna ping them a reminder, because sometimes there's some things that they can contribute that I can't. And I normally put it in the comments. I see there's a few familiar names from the last couple of Zooms. At any point as people are joining here, if you have questions that you want me to hit up during this webinar today, just put them in the chat and then I'll try to get to them in order, because I might already be answering that question. So, but the chat's a great way to do that. And then at the end, after I dump all this information on you, we'll just open up like a live audio questions and answers for folks that are still on and highly interested.
Or would you think I'm
All right, I'm going to mute that person. That's exactly why we hit mute button for folks. I'm going to text those guys, and sometimes Dallas and Bobby at the shop have some contributions they can make too. All right, let's get started. For those that don't know me or haven't been introduced to you, my name is Joe Roeder. I'm one of the partners at Reds here, and I am fortunate enough to be able to host travel, talk fishing, sell tackle, and just help advise people on fishing both near and far. So I'm still an active guide here in the Pacific Northwest, but I do spend a good portion of my time helping people not only plan big trips like this one to Baja with Reds, but you may be heading to Baja with another group or do-it-yourself thing. And I'm happy to help outfit you with tackle and advice, or point you in the right direction to help put together a really good trip just outside of us. So that's a little bit about what I do here. I am really, really excited about today's webinar. This trip is the only one that I've done every single year for the past 11 years. Oh, with the exception, I missed 1 year for COVID. So I would say it's 11 out of 12 years is what I've done for this trip. But I counted the other day. I've done Baja 11 times, always with my wife, because I think it's one of the best destinations for couples fly fishing that there is, period. And there's lots of reasons why I think that is. But as my wife is she's becoming more proficient and more interested. She's always been a very casual angler, not really that interested in going out and fishing all day, much more interested in the vacation element while we're there. And so we built the trip really around bringing a non-angling companion with you. And a few times it's been a daughter, a few times it's just been a friend, but really good for, one real serious angler and then a non-angler. If you're both serious anglers, you can get your own boat. There's itineraries for both a non-angler or two anglers. So the trip scales really, really well for that reason. But that's the reason, one of the many reasons we've done it every single year. The other one is absolutely killer scenery, great accommodations. I love that culture of Mexico and the fishing. Oh my God, the fishing is absolutely world class. Of course, everybody's heard of the Baja Peninsula. But I will let me check the chat and see if anything's come in yet. And I am going to put links into the chat for resources of things that I mentioned during the webinar today. What you can do is you can click those and then they're in your browser history. You can bookmark them. You can come back to the recording later and you can get to that. But there's going to be kind of a series of links. And the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to put in, it's a good starting point anyways, whether you're interested in doing a trip with Reds on our hosted package or just planning in general. I would strongly encourage you to check out the page where our trip offering is, because there is a whole litany of resources that you can click through that we want people to have that are on there. And I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start out with a video. And I didn't plan on doing this. I normally don't just start with a video. But I'm going to start with this video, and we should have my screen up on your screen now. And I'm going to share this video that was put together by the owner operator. And in my opinion, he would never admit this, but he is like the authority on fly fishing Baja. I mean, he's such a humble dude, and his name is James Shaughnessy. And he is also the owner of the Beulah Fly Rod Company, which you may have heard of. But I'm going to start this video from the beginning. And I just watched it and I forgot how cool this video is. But this was all filmed. This was all filmed right out of the fishing operation that we're going to talk about today. So let me click this back on and we'll just watch it. It's only 2 minutes, but I really encourage you to kind of soak this in.
Oh, oh.
I found three.
All right, if that doesn't make you absolutely want to go to fly fish for roosterfish, jacks, and Dorado on the East Cape, I have no idea what will. Some of that cinematography is absolutely incredible. It is absolutely serious fishing. It's not just I think some people see, what Reds has done. Oh, it's a couples trip. That's great. That's like, it must be a nice time, maybe with a little fishing. This is a very, very serious fishing trip. It is high stakes. There's world-class rooster fish there. In fact, most of the world record rooster fish on the fly have come from that strip on the East Cape of the peninsula there. So I'm going to run you through like background about the trip. How much does it cost? What kind of rods do we use? What do the flies look like? What's a day look like? And you can take all of this information and process it and plan a trip, however you see fit. But I will be, and I've said this on the other webinars, I mean, my goal is to get you to go with Reds. That's the only way that I can ensure that you're going to have an absolutely killer trip, is if we're there alongside you, helping coordinate things and communicate with the head guide, communicate with the lodge manager, pick a good week, make sure that decisions are being made that best suit the group when you're there. So that's I want to get you on a hosted trip with us. We can be there to advise and coordinate and be a real spokesperson on behalf of the anglers that are there. So I do have a seminar. I'm going to show you photos. I'm going to show you information, but more than anything, I just want to talk to you just like a real human being and not just a slideshow or a video. But I do have a PowerPoint to help kind of keep me on task just a little bit, because it does have some talking points on there. But the first thing to do is just talk about where. And And you'll have to excuse my voice. I was guiding yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of shouting and a lot of fooling around out there in the boat. But let's back out. Let's talk about where first, just so you have an idea of what we're talking about here. Here's the wonderful United States. God bless America, greatest country on earth, in my humble opinion. And we happen to be up here in the far left, the upper left, far left, and we're going to fly straight all the way down to Cabo. And I think a lot of people hear Cabo and they go, ah, yuck, you're going to Cabo. You know, the last thing I want to do is get a sales pitch for a timeshare. And you know, I don't really want to go drive dune buggies or go on a camel ride or any of that stuff that you can do in Cabo. It's very touristy and very commercial. What we do is we land here. And we land here, and then we take a drive, and we're heading up the coast, and we're heading up closer to Punta Arena. And what we're going to do is we're going to wind up. Let me find it here. We're going to wind up in Bahia. Where am I at? We going all the way up? I'm lost here. Okay, there we are. So this would be the East Cape right here on this side of the Baja Peninsula. And we're going to be in this private little bay right here, Bahia de los Muertos. And this resort that's right here is called Bahia De Los Suenos. And that's where we're going to be staying. It's a very, very quiet white sand beach, very exclusive bay. Nothing around it, literally out here in the middle of Roosterfish paradise. So that's where we're going to be right there. Most of our fishing is going to be done between here and the lighthouse right up here, and that's Punta Arena. And this strategic point right here that leads into the Bahia de la Ventana, in between the island here, there is a massive amount of bait that moves by here. And these rooster fish, especially the big rooster fish that are more mature, are going to come in there certain times of the year looking to pair up, one, to feed, but two, to pair up and find spawning mates. And just this general area right here, especially this point, it's it's world famous. It's very popular. We're certainly not going to be the only anglers there. But that should give you an idea of where we're traveling. It's not going to be in a big city. It's going to be very, very quiet. And this coastline here is it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, some of the homes that are here, just to give you an idea of what the real estate is like where we're at, this right here, that is the owner of Trader Joe's right there. And he has all these Easter Island statues out here. It's like a James Bond evil villain type arrangement right there. But it's a pretty exclusive area. And I say this because it's just an absolutely beautiful area to be, let alone having world-class fishing like you saw in the video. It's a really, really neat spot. So I was always, when I heard Cabo, I was always like, not really interested, but it's much quieter than that. Let's talk a little bit more just about the fishing itself. And I'm going to bring up some slides and show you a slideshow here. And let me share. And there's a lot of history in the area here. And yeah, there's a lot of history in the area here. Sorry if it's in a little spacey. My screen share while I'm on Zoom with two monitors is kind of wacky. The photo in the background here is kind of funny. It's an old sign that's in the bay there, and there's all sorts of hoists for weighing fish when fishermen would come in historically. And I thought it was just kind of a cool artifact to remind myself the deep history that's in that region right there. So I think that is a very, very kind of a cool lead off there. The resort itself is really strategically located. We actually get picked up right on the beach, right in front of the resort. And this is us getting loaded up. We're loading in lunches and beers. You don't have to go anywhere in the morning. That's why I think that James, and Fly Fish Max run the best operation that there is, because the logistics that we have working in our favor there are the best that there is. So the boats literally pull up to a little slot in the rocks right here, and we jump in every morning, and it's very, very efficient. There's no getting in a car, there's no driving, there's no trailering in a boat or getting picked up by your guide at the hotel. We get picked up right here and we go. And sometimes, yeah, we get picked up right there and we go. As far as just general organization, at least on our trips, I'll try to keep the hosted sales pitch to somewhat of a minimum, but again, that's why I can do this, is we do want to get these trips or this trip filled up. You can book in as a couple with one angler. You can book in as a couple with two anglers. It doesn't matter. We will match anglers up with other anglers and then have a rotation with all the single anglers throughout the week. With a host, you're going to have an on-site mentor, and I'm not positive if that's going to be Kelly. That's my wife and I, and that's my wife and I in the right-hand side of the picture there. And that's James and Margaret Shaughnessy, the owner operators of the outfitting operation at the resort there. And James stays there about half of the year to run the operation, and then Margaret comes down on vacation. And Margaret, what she's holding in her hands there, that is the IGFA certification for her world record roosterfish on the fly. So Margaret is the world record holder for roosterfish on the fly, 20-pound IGFA tippet class, which is kind of like the standard. In an unbelievable fish. Their scale bottomed out at 60 pounds. It was well over that, but they couldn't officially, and it would have shattered the existing world record. But that's as much as they could officially score it at, but it was still the world record. And that was caught, out of the resort operation here. But with the host, you're going to have an on-site mentor. We act as a liaison between all the anglers in the group and the guide crew. So if there's bad weather in the morning or the afternoon, we can collectively shift the fishing program to meet the fishing without a group spokesman there trying to move all of that timing and all of that around is just simply impossible. So the host makes a lot of things happen behind the scenes that you may not necessarily appreciate. And the host is also there to give all of the anglers a kick in the butt if things are moving slowly or people aren't on time or people aren't prepared and it's slowing the group down. The host is there to give people a little boost, and maybe that's just a hand with gear or a hand putting rods together or knots or carrying something for them, or maybe it's a kick in the butt and say, hey, Frank, we've got to get you moving. Like, we can't slow the group down 30 minutes every day. We can't slow the group down 30 minutes every day. So we keep things on track and we rotate the guides so that everybody gets access to the various guides throughout the week. And if there's a guide that you're absolutely in love with, we try to get you access to fish with that guide again. And we're the person that you go to when you need something. We're there to help. We are invested in making sure that you have an absolutely amazing trip. The other thing that we do, and I'll stop the share for just a second here because PowerPoint puts people to sleep if I leave it on too long, is we also do on the couples trip, we do a double date day. And so what we'll do is, as the host will pick what looks to be a good weather day. And we usually try to make that about day 3. But the Ponga boats we're in are big enough for 4 people. And what we do with all the folks that are booked on a one angler, one non-angler itinerary, we pair them up and we do 4 in a boat those days. And it's a little bit more casual fishing and it's a lot of fun. And all we have to do on that, there's no extra charges. We tip our guides more on that day to do a double date day. And some of the anglers will say, no, my spouse would hate this. They wouldn't like it at all. Well, then they can stay in that day. And I'll just keep you out with another angler. The host will keep you out with another angler. But the point is, you get a day to go out with your spouse or your partner and have a casual fishing day where you're going to see sea lions and whales and sea turtles and all sorts of bird life and just tour around. Maybe you do a little bit of snorkeling or you swim with manta rays. It's a really, really great trip just from an eco tour standpoint. So we do one day where the couples will go out and have kind of a double date day. And sometimes that's a full day, or sometimes we swing back by the resort and pick non-anglers up mid-morning is another option there. But that's a pretty cool thing about the hosted trip that we do. And it's a lot of fun for everybody to get to share that with one another. So it's kind of how the hosted situation works. The flight logistics, there's a shot of the grand entrance to the resort. That's like so supposedly like a $1 million palapa. It's incredible. The resort is like out of this world. I don't want to build it up too much, but it's pretty awesome. The flight planning is easy. You fly into San Jose del Cabo. Reds takes care of the rest. We provide all the ground transportation as part of your trip fee. So that's super easy. We stop for provisions on the way up. It's a big resort, so we stop for tonic water, soda water, some extra beers to have in the boat, so that you don't have to run to the restaurant and bar every time you want a cold beer. Just a convenience thing. It's a big resort, so there's full kitchens and refrigerators and things in the resort. It's very comfortable for a week, especially for non-anglers staying in. To have a whole living space in essentially a shared house all to yourselves is really a nice feature. So that's another shot of the entrance to the resort. It's absolutely beautiful. That's the view from kind of what would be the commons area where we meet up every day for happy hour. We meet up right here to go fishing in the morning. And in this view right here, you see the boats pull up. When the captains start pulling up out in front of the resort, it's go time. Grab your rods, grab your bag, and let's go. That's another shot just getting loaded up in the morning, right out in front of the villas there where we stay. And that's my wife view from my wife and I's room this last year. She's having coffee, reading her book a little bit while we wait for the captains to start motoring across the bay and pick us up. So really cool place. Infinity pool, loading up. The Ponga boats are quite comfortable. One common question that we get is just, how rough is the water? Is there a lot of waves, etc.? And it can vary a bit. It is offshore fishing, so meaning we're not going to be waiting. It's all going to be essentially 100% in the boat. And I had a slide dedicated to this, but I think I'll just jump on this question right now. What's the fishing like? Are we walking the beach? In the video you saw, guys walking the beach. You can walk a little bit, but I don't personally walk much, and I don't really recommend it. I think that there's if you get 5 days a year to roosterfish fish, or 5 days a year to fish Dorado, and you have the choice of walking beaches, hoping to maybe see a fish or two throughout the entire day, or you could take off in a Ponga boat to the most strategic places that there are, be in an elevated position, fishing the shoals where the captains know these fish to be, and then throw live sardines at a pre-existing feeding frenzy. And you get to see feeding action like you saw in the video there. I mean, you have 5 days a year. It'd be, almost insane to just exclusively walk the beach. Maybe if you had 3 weeks or 4 weeks to spend in Baja, I would say, yeah, spend a week walking. But I think for most people's limited time and the experiences that you get to have witnessing that feeding frenzy, it's like BBC type, like, beast and prey action, predatory action, like right in front of your boat. It is very, very exciting what you get to see in those feeding frenzies. So I would expect to go down, at least for this operation, go down and just plan to boat fish. We did spend a whole day walking one day when the outside was too rough. It was the first year I was there at this particular operation, and the surf was so rough we couldn't get out in the boats for the day. So we went and walked Playa de la Ventana, and it was a much more protected strip of beach, very good fishing, sardines everywhere. And the only fish that was caught in the entire group, I think, of 12 anglers all day was one jack crevalle. No roosterfish spotted. There are other operations where you can run ATVs up and down the beach and things like that, but this is not one of those ops. I strongly encourage you to utilize the Panga boat. As far as like rough water and being in waves and things like that, I think it's like anything. Conditions can vary quite a bit based on, week to week, day to day. I wouldn't call it particularly wavy. I have fished north of Los Bariles or La Ventana. We'll just say La Ventana. North of La Ventana in Loreto, where we had to go a lot further out to find Dorado, and the swell was on average much bigger. we're within a mile to a couple miles of the shore most of the time. And there are a few times when you're in a little roll or a few waves, but the captains are extremely cognizant of what your balance and your ability can handle and what they can. The captains are very good. And if you have a little trouble standing on the elevated deck or the casting deck of the Panga, there is a handhold, a PVC handhold that you can use for balance. But you can also fish out of the bilge in the bottom. And I don't know if bilge is the right word, but just in the floor of the boat or the bottom of the boat, you can fish out of there too. And that's much less, has a much lower center of gravity. And I've caught lots of fish out of the casting from the floor of the boat. Two anglers can cast at a time in these Panga boats. They're very comfortable. They're very big, very stable. The captains all have radios. They're well equipped. The captains do not speak hardly any English. So we will provide you with a little Spanish lesson before we go in the form of a very convenient document that our one of our founding partners, Steve Joyce, put together here. He is quite capable in Spanish, and he put together a cheat sheet. So I think that's really handy to have when communicating.
It's nice.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this.
Okay, that's great. So we're going to, we're going to talk about match the hatch a little bit. Okay, so the fishing strategy in general is going to be match the sardine hatch. And what they've done at Bahia De Los Suenos or Fly Fish Mex is they have sardines are very important to have in the boat, live sardines. And what happens is, and I hear people kind of hate on, and that's, you can take a kind of a quick mental snapshot. We'll go back to that in just a second, but those are the flies, some of the fly patterns that we use there. Now, I've heard, internet alphas chime in on YouTube or social media and say, oh, chumming, that's so lame. That must be the easiest thing in the world, blah, blah, blah. And I've yet to meet somebody who hates on chumming that has been more accomplished in saltwater fishing than I have per se. I think it's great. It's great fun. You're adding to an existing feeding frenzy. You're not going out and finding fish with chum. You have to pull up into a very strategic spot, and the ocean is huge. What do you think the sardines do when a boat pulls up to a point? You think the sardines just come to the boat? No, they start drifting away. They start moving away. Everything starts moving away from the boat. So you're in the Sea of Cortez, for crying out loud. It's gigantic. You need something to keep those fish feeding and sustain feeding activity near your boat, because you're not pulling that boat. You're not motoring that boat. You ain't paddling that boat. That boat is just free adrift out there in the Sea of Cortez. And if you don't do something to keep those fish near your boat, you're not going to have a whole lot of success. So I hear people say, oh, they hate on chumming and things like that. I just don't think those folks have done very much fishing in this environment. If you have, you'll realize that predator and prey relationship and all those interactions that you get to see outside of catching a fish are an extremely heightened and very exciting experience that's just great to witness. And it is not easy. It is these fish are very picky, and the fact that they have sardines available to them, the fish become very discriminating on understanding what's real and what's fake. What's real and what's fake. Hey, and I do have a couple of questions came in. I'm just going to hit them real quick because they're short ones. The Pangas have awnings for shade as designed. They do not have awnings just because that's not very conducive to fly fishing, and this is like a fly fishing operation, most of all of what they do. And Mike asked, a Baja angler suggested wearing knee pads of the Panga, but I didn't get his context. Makes sense to you? I've never done that, but I could totally see how that could be a good idea, especially if you're older and you have a little bit of trouble balancing. I think knee pads being on the deck for fighting fish and staying low if that boat's listing a little bit, and trying to bring your rod around the front of the boat so that you don't break rods while fighting these incredibly hard fighting species. I could see how knee pads could be very, very advantageous. But I wanted to hit on the chumming things real quick. This is a live chum operation. We'll throw sardines into the mix. It'll be a whole fray. You're going to see feeding activity like you can't even imagine. It is incredible to watch that type of feeding activity. So I wanted to hit on that real quick. That's the general operation. So you will need to match the sardines very well. These are some of my favorite patterns that we fish there. And they look a little bit different in the water, of course. But if I had to pick one of those flies, it would be these ones right here. And those are called airheads. And I've made a couple of modifications to this one right here. This one that's right below the real sardine there. And I made a few modifications with a marker. But based on where the bait boat is able to catch and net the sardines, they may look a little bit different. But I would bring a permanent marker. I would bring a good variety of flies. I would bring a little set of scissors, and I would bring white, gray, olive, tan, and bluish flies. Just something, some flies that have those types of shades to them. Black is not very useful in Baja. This is just, I just grabbed this. I didn't really prep it, but this is just, some examples of some of the flies I'm using. I do like to keep a popper. That's called a pole dancer. I do like to keep a popper in there. That's called a gym sock. That's a good one too. You can see it has some sardine-like stripes on it. And I literally ran out of airheads on this last trip, and they were so beat up. The eyes were coming off of them. I was trimming them. And that is the absolute best sardine pattern I've found. And of course, you can get them at, you guessed it, Red's Fly Shop. But one thing that's cool about the sardine are the airhead pattern for sardines, and this is a life hack for like all saltwater bait fish applications, is the airhead has got this kind of this bubble epoxy head. If a fly does not have an eye, it does not look very real as a bait fish. And so we used to sell a lot of Enrico Puglisi style flies, and those are fine flies. We no longer carry the Enrico Puglisis, but it was always one thing that happened: the eyes would come off. And one thing that I really like about the airhead is, look at that. I just take and put an eye right back on that thing, and then I can actually put a little dot that the sardines have a little dot, and then I can actually run a stripe down the side of that. And I can doctor that thing up to look a lot like the sardines. And the captains also have a little fun with that. And I can run these stripes back into the material as well to match that. And you can do that on site. You can do it in the evenings. But I think that's one cool thing about the airhead is I can replace the eyes. And it's not quite like the real thing, but you can carry a couple of different markers to modify those. But if I was to take one fly for Baja for the rest of my life, it would without a doubt be one of those airhead patterns. So, and the scissors are to modify, so you can start with the one that's a little long, you can taper it down, and you can make it look nice and real because it does make a big difference. The fish are very, very selective there when it comes to patterns. So those are some of the patterns right next to the real thing. This was the day we walked the beach. I took a picture of after all the anglers, we hiked the beach all day. It was a lot of fun, but man, we didn't catch much. One thing I love about the Baja trip is we're out early in the morning. I think that seeing that Cia Cortez sunrise, and all of the rooms are set up to where you watch that sun just boil out of the ocean. It's absolutely spectacular. But we get an early start every day. We try to go as early as we can. The morning bite is typically the best, and we'll fish. We'll leave anywhere from 5:30 a.m. on an extreme early day to as late as 8 or 8:30 a.m. Later on. So if the bait guys are having a hard time netting the sardines, we might go a little bit later. And the captains will communicate that to the group leader, and then the group leader will let the customers know accordingly. Okay, rods, reels, and lines. Let's touch on gear real quick, because that's always a big question. So we're looking at 10 weight minimum. I don't bother taking anything lighter than a 10. Intermediate lines, or what we use there. We use, there's one line that I use for everything. It's a Rio Outbound Tropical Short FHI. And I will put a link to that in the chat. I'll put a variety of different links in the chat window as soon as I'm done with the screen share. We're using 20 to 60 pound tippet, depending on what you're doing. With the roosterfish, I like a 25 or 30 pound tippet. The smaller roosterfish that we target south of the resort are generally a little bit more tippet shy, and you can get away with using even 16 or 20 pound. The water is so clear. It is absolutely just the clearest water you can imagine. So that tippet size can make a big difference. We don't use tapered leaders. We don't use tapered leaders. We just run straight tippet. And what I like to run is I run the Scientific Anglers Absolute Fluorocarbon. I can put my wrist through here when I'm rigging stuff up. I can pull the line off. I'll bring 25 for most of my roosterfish. They seem to be a little bit more leader shy, and I have landed, if you're wondering about 25 pound, I have landed enormous roosterfish on 25 pound test. It is incredible how strong that is when it's essentially knotless. I've also started going to 10-foot leaders, long leader. They're very smart. I shot some underwater video, and I cannot wait to produce all of it for YouTube. I have not gotten around to editing yet, but I actually put my GoPro on a buoy and threw it out while we were fishing, and have underwater footage of fish eating sardines and my wife casting into it. And it was amazing footage, but it was incredible how well you could see even a clear tip fly line. It was like a joke. I mean, it was so visible. It was so apparent. Even the leader was highly apparent. So I went to running 10 to 12 foot leaders. I can cast them pretty well. I actually think they turn over okay. So I think that's kind of a thing to work on, maybe, is making sure that you have enough line speed to get that oomph and get that turnover on a longer leader, because I think it's a competitive advantage. But I'll bring 40 pound for the Dorado. The Dorado aren't quite as leader shy. There's also some offshore opportunities at, say, some yellowfin tuna, some marlin, and some super duper giant Dorado way offshore. So it's good to have some 60 pound as well, in my opinion, just for other opportunities that pop up. You want a big, strong reel. There's lots of different brands, lots of different stuff you can do, but you want something with a really big gear ratio. That's a big Galvin Torque 12. That's the reel. I used that on my last trip. I've got two roosterfish that I would say were 50 to 70 plus pounds on this Galvin. Worked fine, worked really good. It's got a big gear ratio, big arbor. And then I've got my super special, this Gulfstream. I've landed several super giant ones on that. It has a roosterfish on it, so I feel obligated to use that one. But just get the best reel that you can afford. I think that it'll pay big dividends when you get there and you're cranking on a fish. The hardest fighting fish that I've ever fought, I landed a tarpon a couple years ago that was well over 100 pounds, and the roosterfish I've fought another 25% harder than that, in my opinion, probably because they don't jump like crazy and burn themselves out like the tarpon do. But big roosterfish pull harder than anything I've ever fought, and I think including giant trevally, for whatever reason. And maybe that's because where I've hooked the roosterfish, they've got more space to run, but roosterfish fight unbelievably hard. As far as rods go, I've used a bunch of different rods there. There was an NRX Plus saltwater in that picture right there. The NRX Plus salts never let me down. I have broke a couple of rods down there, and I've had unbelievably good success with the Beulah rods. These were tested, designed, engineered, prototypes were tested, all at this exact location. And James Shaughnessy, the owner of Beulah, is the one who designed, tested all these, and it's embarrassing, but his Beulah rods bailed me out and my customers out several times when we broke rods down there, either casting or fighting a fish incorrectly or something. And the Beulah rods have been like absolutely bulletproof. They cast like rockets, and they have this really cool fighting grip up top. I've done a bunch of reviews on these. I don't mean to turn this into a product review, but you want something that you can really bore into and crank. And this hand up here for both making a short cast. I often choke up on the rod, but also when I'm ready to crank, I can really hammer on that. It's a really cool grip system that they have. So big reels, big rods, heavy lines. We want an intermediate sinking line so that we can get our fly just off the surface. I've used fast sinking lines. I've used intermediate. I've tried floating. The intermediate's kind of where it's at if I had to choose one line. That's the topic on gear. We will go into some questions and answers on gear here in a minute. I'll just show you a couple of photos. Of just kind of the species. I think by this time you kind of know how to identify the different species. But there's your roosterfish. They've got that beautiful fan that comes up when they attack. It's the coolest thing in the world when you're on a feeding frenzy and their sardines are hitting the water and these fish are blitzing the boat. You literally feel like you're under siege when these bruisers come in. It's amazing. But that fan pops up, they attack, and they use that fan to stun the sardines and stun the prey. If they're not able to just grab it with their big gaping jaws, they'll stun it with that fan and create a whitewash, disorient the prey. They'll turn a 180 and come back and eat it. So roosterfish is going to be our number one priority. The next thing we're looking at are these Dorado. And the Dorado, the last couple years prior to this year, we didn't have really very good Dorado fishing. And then this year it was absolutely incredible. In fact, I'm gonna bust over and I'm gonna show you just a video. Let me show you a video. Gosh, I had it open just before we stopped here. And I'm just gonna run this live. This is a project I'm working on that I haven't
We are here in
completed
beautiful
yet.
Baja, Mexico, world's best destination on the fly for Dorado. We're finding some Dorado here. I'm going to wait and make my shot. I just love this fishing. It is so exciting. There's a big school of bait here, and we're adding a few sardines to the feeding frenzy here. And there's a Dorado right under the boat right there. But you want to make sure, and that's not uncommon. There's captains communicate really well. That's another member of our party that's pulling up. And I just want to try to find the best one here. And I'm going to lay it in right there. Oh, he just took a swipe at it. Oh. So. And there's a lot of needlefish in there too. It is crazy. It is crazy. But those needlefish. Oh, he just ate it again. You got to take it away from the needles and the jacks if you want a Dorado. Oh, there it is. That's a Dorado there. He's going to jump like crazy. That was awesome. Oh, that is awesome. That is too much fun.
So that's just kind of what it looks like in real time. It can be really just a crazy feeding frenzy when you roll up on one of those schools. And there will be Dorado, there will be jacks, there will be needlefish that are like this long. They're about this long and about this big around. And you need to keep your fly away from the needlefish. That's one of the tips that I'll have for you when we cover tips here in a second. And I'll run through a couple more slides, and then I'll kind of start going through Q&A before we open up kind of verbal, or I'll open up the chat Q&A, or I'll hit the chat Q&A before I start going through that. So we got Dorado there. Dorado are just such a cool species. They jump like crazy. They're fun to hold. They're also called mahi-mahi. I think a lot of folks know that. And we'll keep a few of these, and then we'll take them back to the restaurant at the resort, and the chef there will prep just amazing mahi-mahi for us, both ceviche appetizers, it's sashimi. They just will do anything with the Dorado when we bring them back. So it's a really, really great opportunity to keep a couple of those as well, which is always fun. We'll also catch Jack Crevalle. The guides will call them yellow jacks because they got a yellow tail. A lot of anglers will call them the Mexican GT or the Mexican Trevally. They're a really, really hard fighting species, very sporty. even just an average sized yellow jack like that pulls unbelievably hard. And they're so much fun. They can get up to about 30 pounds. And gosh, they're a really underappreciated game species, in my opinion. The yellow jacks are, these jacks are just unbelievable. So Jack Crevalle would be the proper name. So Mexican GT, Jack Crevalle, underappreciated kind of third species that we pursue there, that a lot of people don't talk about, but it will make a lot of memories for you. And you can see how close to the beach we're fishing there. I mean, we're not way out offshore or anything like that. Another species that's very, very good there is the marlin. There's a lot of good marlin, up to, anywhere from 80 to 150 pounds. I personally I've gone marlin fishing. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I just like the light tackle fly fishing, but this picture jumped out at me as one to share with you. So this is my wife's cousin Walt in the picture, and his wife Karen. And Karen had never really done much fishing at all, and she came on the trip. And you can fish some conventional gear, and she caught this on conventional gear, which it's very easy to mix conventional and fly with your fishing partner on this trip. So, maybe you got a fishing partner that doesn't fish a lot of fly. This is okay on this trip. Karen ended up catching, marlin. She caught jacks. It's a very inclusive trip is the word I use for just somebody who wants to fish a little bit of gear. You could use some live bait. The captains are very good at mixing those two, and it makes it a lot of fun. And it's great. You can go troll for marlin.
No hundreds.
Yeah, I think we'll mute that person there. But anyway, it's very inclusive. You can fish a little bit with gear. You can fish a little bit with fly. It's just, we want everyone to have a lot of fun, everybody who comes on the trip, versus going to like bonefish fishing in the Bahamas where it's fly is all you're going to do. Baja scales well for this type of fishing. She caught a roosterfish, which was really, really cool. So you can come on this trip with just a small skill set, and you could gear fish, fly fish, just come out to have a good time and have a great attitude on the trip. So a couple of roosterfish tips. And you can't see me in that picture, but that's the biggest roosterfish that I've caught. I mean, it was, man, I almost threw up fighting that fish. It was unbelievable. And don't get scared. That's not common. You're not going to come down and catch one of those every day. You're not probably going to catch one during the week. That's a very rare thing. But you do want to be prepared in the event you get an epic fish of all time on the line. You want to have good gear and be ready to fight them. So here's a couple of quick hitter roosterfish tips. You want to, when you see the roosterfish, you want to see what the fish is doing, and instead of just flailing, getting, losing your mind, getting buck fever, and just throwing an errant cast or 10 at the fish before you kind of understand it, just let the fish feed and take a few of those live sardines near the boat first, then make a very accurate cast, preferably as the fish is moving toward you. And you want to throw slightly short of the fish. Sardines do not swim toward a predator. They only swim away from a predator. So do not throw the line beyond it and swim your fly toward the fish. You have to be very accurate and very, very fast. I'm telling you, like Chuck Norris fast when you cast at these things, okay? Like quick. So slightly short of the cast, 10-foot leader. I like 25-pound fluoro. Get good at knots so that you can change your own fly when needlefish wreck your leader, or you get a knot in your leader. Don't distract your guide. Let your guide watch for fish. Let the guide do their job. Learn how to change your own fly. Very important, something you can control. And we will do a knot clinic on the hosted trip so that everybody learns that early in the trip. And then when the roosterfish do make a whitewash, you want to shoot for the whitewash and throw your fly right in the whitewash that they create. And then if there's live sardines, if you can see a live sardine, aim for the live sardine, especially if it is jumping out of the water. A terrified sardine is going to be jumping and trying to get away from the giant roosterfish chasing it. So you will often see the jumping sardine before you see the roosterfish. You see a jumping sardine, that's your target. And then stop stripping on the needlefish. Do not hook needlefish. They're super annoying. If you want to see your guide kill needlefish all day long, just hook the needlefish and the guide will drag them in. And they have big teeth. The guide will whack them on the head, then unhook them and throw them back in. It gets old pretty fast. You don't want to hook too many needlefish. So a couple of Dorado tips. My wife fished all 5 days on this last trip. She had not fished a whole lot on previous trips. And Dorado was like a big coming out party for her. She threw an 11 weight rod like a champ. We practiced a little bit before we went. The Dorado were very willing to bite. And if you did it right, you know, we found Dorado that were hungry and gave her a ton of confidence, and she had a great time fishing during the week. Anybody can do this. And you want to wait for a feeding fish or an aggressive fish. Don't just cast at every Dorado you see, because some of them will be full. This area is full of sardines. I mean, natural sardines. Not the chum. They're just full because it's the bait rich area. And when you strip the fly, I see this all the time. People strip super fast and then they can't maintain it or they can't speed up. The bait will start slow, and then when a fish begins to chase it, then it speeds up. So start with a strip of reasonable speed, and as you feel or sense the fish coming for it or see the fish coming for it, then speed up to a very, very fast strip. And then you want to make sure that you just have a nice straight, clean cast. That's the main thing. And I think that's the last slide I've got in the slideshow here. So let me switch back, or I'm actually going to show you a couple of other little things here. So let me jump over to one of my other tabs here, and we'll show you flies. And I'll start to put a few things in the chat. Excuse me. So this is a fly list for Baja, and I'm going to throw that in the chat window here. And I'll just label it fly list. If you're curious, you can just link over, and those are my recommended flies for Baja. Hopefully that's helpful whether you're going with us or not. And the line I like, and I'm very, there isn't really another line that I like. This is the line. It's this one right here. And I'll just pre-select the 11 weight. I'll pre-select the 11 weight because the 11 is kind of a happy medium for this. I'll put the fly line in there. I think I put the trip information in there. And I think that's, I'm going to share one more thing. And this is a video that I put together. And I'm going to put this in here because I think it's pretty well done. There's a blog article that accompanies it. And I mean, people around the world have messaged me and just said, hey, this was incredibly helpful. Is this video right here? And in real time, I'm not going to play the whole thing for you. That would be.
Joe, the slide didn't change from.
Yep, I just got a warning on that. Thank you. We should be on there now. Thank you for who let me know. How are we doing now?
Flies an option.
We on a what looks like a roosterfish fishing video here. Yeah, I think we are. Okay. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to say Roosterfish 101, but if you're serious about getting good at this and trying to make the most out of your trip, hit that video up because I take some time and I really explain a lot of the tips that I just had to hit on really briefly here. So I think that's really, really handy. Let me hit the chat questions and then we'll just go like live fire questions and answers. Let me expand the chat here and stop the share. So let's go, and I'll just do chats in order here. Yeah, lots of chats. Excellent. Okay. And I'm just going to do these real quick because a lot of them are real short. Flash in your fly compared to no flash. I've seen no difference in flash versus no flash. I yeah, I've seen no difference in that as far as I can tell. Do you ever fish in evening time, like 4 p.m. to dark, and you can go walk the beach? George asked that. George, you can go walk the beach near the resort and evening fish, no problem. You won't go fish in the Pangas because it's a sardine availability issue. Once we're out of sardines, we can go troll and we can do other stuff, but we're not going to be very effective at targeting fish. Not when there's that much bait in the water. It's the fish aren't going to stay near our boat long enough. We might get just a glancing shot at best. So that's more of a sardine issue. But there's a bay that you can walk to, and if somebody wanted to just beach fish, some of the video that we saw was shot at the resort there. Mark says he's been to Loretto 3 times. Can you contrast the odds for Dorado versus roosters at this location? Yeah, so way more rooster fish, not even remotely a comparison. There's so many more rooster fish further south at Bahia De Los Suenos. I caught 1 rooster fish in all the times I went to Loretto, and it was tiny. It was barely a rooster fish. It was like a rooster chick. It was like this big. The Dorado fishing, I would say, is a little more consistent in Loretto, but the Dorado are much larger on average on the East Cape. Loretto is a super cool town to visit for a do-it-yourself trip, like not doing a Reds hosted thing. I hosted trips in Loretto for, I think, 7 times, and it's a great vacation spot. Super fun, pure fishing wise. Bahia de los Suenos is several notches above it from a pure fishing standpoint. Yeah, and Jake Zirkle put a pretty good answer to that. Crease flies are good for, yeah, John, nice contribution there. Crease flies are good for Dorado. I don't really run crease flies that much because usually my rods are set up for both Roosterfish and Dorado in the same day typically, so I generally just run streamers. Crease flies can be very effective because crease flies basically make a V-wake and it looks like a sardine that's basically tail walking, and the bubble or the wake action, think about it a little bit like a popper that more than anything just shoots a rooster tail basically through its forehead, and it can confuse the fish's actual view or perception of what the bait looks like, and it's very exciting. I mean, they have to eat it right on the surface, which even with an intermediate line, our flies are this close to the surface. You see everything. You see every strike, every bite. You see that fish's mouth open and eat your flies. It's unbelievable. John asked, do captains have conventional gear and teasers to bring in marlin? Yep, they got the conventional gear. That's what they've got. So don't worry about bringing any conventional gear. They got you covered. And can non-anglers take a day trip to La Paz? Yes, they can. There's also a little town called El Triunfo that's a cool little day trip. And you hit on there was a question about non-angler activities. We only have, we're already bordering on an hour on this talk. I could talk for like 3 hours about this. I would have no voice left if I told you everything I wanted to share with you about the trip. But for non-angling activities, there's spa services at the resort. So most of the non-anglers, which are historically women, they love to get a massage. They'd like to lay in the pool, go to the beach, go kayaking, stand up paddleboarding, do a little snorkeling. There's a tamale making class that we did as the whole group. That was super fun. And that's what we did for appetizers one night. We got this like cool cooking class. We'll do usually a cocktail making class as a group. We all throw in $30-40 and we learn how to make cocktails, learn how to make tamales. There's some really fun group oriented stuff to do at the resort as well. But there are some day trips that you can do out of the resort that the non-anglers that stay back basically will communicate as the week goes on, and there's some a la carte activities that you can hire out. There's a yoga instructor will come and do a group yoga class that's always fun. It's usually followed by mimosas. So yoga and mimosas usually takes up one day. And then the fun thing is when you fish, we leave early and then we get back early. I'll rarely even fish till 2. I mean, usually I'm back at 1. Usually I want that morning bite and then I'm done. So you're not like you're out from dawn till dusk. So if your spouse is back at the resort, you're back at 2 o'clock. You come back, it's happy hour, take a nap, lay by the pool, play some cribbage in the shade. It's just a good vacation trip that mixes like that. And then Toby asked, can you discuss the cost of a non-fishing spouse, extra cost to go 1 day and observe? So there is no charge to go for, say, Toby wants to bring your wife, assumingly, no cost to go in the boat for a day. We dedicate 1 day where all the couples, that's just part of being on the trip. You say, hey, I'm a one angler person. 1 day we're going out as couples. Okay. And if there's a couple that doesn't want to go, usually we'll just have to mix it up, be flexible, mix it up. But we do 1 day, so there's no extra cost other than another little more. We throw another $50 at the guide for having another body in the boat and the hospitality of the guide. As far as pricing goes, that's all in the original link. But let me run over the pricing real quick. It's probably going to go up a little bit. I would say I think the term is a reasonable amount because we haven't adjusted prices for fuel for 2024. And when that happens, the cost of sardines and everything goes up a little bit. For food, lodging, fishing, ground transportation, and the sardine expense, which can be pretty significant by the end of the week, is $58.90 per couple. So you're basically looking at $3,000 a person for, well, $6,000 for a couple when one's a non-angler, 6 nights, 5 days, and then $8,000 for both 2-couple itinerary. Now, if you're still on this call and you're interested in this and you're thinking, hey, it looks like there's mostly men on the call here today, but if there's women too, that is a good piece of information to have. If you're thinking that you're like, maybe we want to fish several days, maybe we don't, I'm not sure yet, I strongly recommend you buy out the whole boat and you just do the 2-angler itinerary, because even if you're like, you get into it and you're like, the fishing's like, my wife is this exact person. The fishing for a long time she felt was a little over her head, and she didn't like what she felt was pressure from me and the captain, and it really wasn't. It was just she doesn't realize that saltwater fishing is really hard, and a lot of us don't catch much some of the time. Once she got over that, she wanted to fish every day, but the years where she didn't go out in the boat every day, she was missing all these stories about seeing whale sharks and dolphins and sea turtles and sea lions and these crazy birds and swimming with the manta rays. There was all this eco tour stuff taking place during the fishing day every single day. And if you're thinking, yeah, we're a pretty sporty couple, we like to be in the boat, we like, we want to spend time together, book the 2-angler trip. And if she doesn't want to go, just to have her stay in, or since you're controlling that boat, I mean, that's your boat that day, you go out in the morning, swing back by at 11 o'clock and pick her up, and then go to her and do a little trolling for marlin and just chit chat and, drink Modelo's, while you do 2 hours of trolling and get a little like ocean tour. I mean, it's a great trip for that. So that's my 2 cents on booking it. If the budget isn't really that sensitive and you want to spend time together as a couple in the boat, just book 2 anglers and have control of that boat. I think it's just really wise advice for that. Toby asks, how many hours do you fish a day? They will run you 8 hours if that's what you want to do, and you just need to express that clearly to your guide. Just know that they when the bait brokers, these guys that go out and they're netting sardines in the morning, they're putting them in barrels, they're putting them in live wells, and they're stashing them here and there. It's like a really militant operation geographically, because you might have to run a long ways to get sardines based on where those are available, and then you have to run way back for the optimal fishing, and then you got to run back out to get the sardines, and then you got to run way back. There are some logistics at play that limit the ability to really have a highly productive 8 hours. If you want to stay out, you're probably going to be trolling for marlin. I mean, that's like, or trolling for sea bass or trolling for even roosterfish. But once you're out of sardines, the odds of you being out there floating around in the ocean and getting a shot at these roosterfish that are pelagic and very migratory, and they're here 1 minute and they're gone the next, the odds of you keeping them by your boat are like so minuscule that you'll be like, no, margarita time. I'm going to go get chips and guac by the pool and see how everybody else did for the day. I mean, it's so much fun when you get back. So I'll usually be on the water about 6 hours a day. I mean, you can get more if you want, but I think that's a pretty reasonable estimate or an average. There's some great questions today. I'm so glad that we're getting these. Yeah, we clean gear with fresh water each day. Usually I just clean mine at the end of the week. I'm much less sensitive about that as I used to be. We do get some tuna. There's an opportunity, and that's a good question from George. We're getting into the nitty-gritty now. There's one boat we can hire that's more capable offshore. It has a 250 horsepower engine. And I guess it's $1 per horsepower because the price has been 250 extra bucks to go out and run way offshore and target tuna. And I did that one day. It was amazing. I did not hook one, admittedly. My buddy hooked one and it wrecked him so fast. It was unbelievable. Those are very strong fish. And you can go offshore for yellowfin and try to hook up tuna. You can do it. It's a little extra money. And what we do is we try to find other anglers that want to do that. And we can send, say, I think we can send up to 4 in the big boat offshore. And so sometimes we'll end up splitting that cost amongst the 4 that want to go do it, especially if there's 2 couples. So the host can have some acting flexibility during the day. The other thing you can do in that boat that goes for tuna is there are some buoys, some like secret buoys out there. And the buoys make a shadow that projects down. The sardines go under the buoy. The giant Dorado that are way offshore go to that buoy. And so there's an opportunity to target some super giant Dorado offshore as well. So that's the other thing you can do when you're way out there. And I think there was, Toby asked another question was, he said, what's the usual time of day? And we start anywhere from like 5:30 in the morning on the early end, depending on the logistics of getting bait, the captains, the weather, the wind, that kind of stuff, all the way up. We might not get in the boats till 8 sometimes. It depends. There's always a little bit of flex there. The ocean's, it's a living creature. So depending on the bait logistics and what the captains think is appropriate for that day, it changes a little bit from time to time. Well, I managed to ramble through it all in a little over an hour and get the chat questions, but if anybody wants to unmute and just start hitting me with audio questions, we can do that. If this is a trip that you want to sign up for, you can. I'm going to put Dallas. The bookings are best run by Dallas. He handles all of our payments and deposits. Dallas, are you on the call right now?
Yep, I'm on the call.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in booking it, the best way to go about that would be to shoot me an email. I think Joe just added it into the chat. And then I can also help facilitate any of your questions. Sometimes the typical, like the more technical gear questions, I might dodge to Joe. But if it's just travel questions, that kind of stuff, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. So feel free to shoot them my way and I will get them answered for you one way or another.
Yeah, Dallas handles all the payments and stuff like that. So it's kind of a good idea sometimes to go directly. And then technical questions, I'm going to put my email in here as well, because some of you might be doing Baja and just you need gear, you need information, that kind of stuff. And so if you get technical questions, my email's in there as well. But yeah, we would love to get you signed up. At this time, it looks like either my wife Kelly and I might be hosting the 2024 trip. We're not exactly sure yet. We've been 11 out of 12 years, and we've never really had that week in June to spend with our family, and our kids are getting older. We've got teenagers, one almost ready to leave for college. So we might take a year off, and Dallas that was on the call he and his wife may end up hosting. We're not sure yet, but either way, we will knock it out of the park for you and the group. It is one of the best trips that we do. We love this place. So anyway, if you're finished up and you're ready to nod off here, yeah, just thanks for tuning in today. We will do next week, we're going to do a rerun of Ascension Bay's seminar on Wednesday because I didn't record it, and we had so many requests to get that one recorded. We'll do that one next Wednesday, but I wouldn't drag your feet too long on booking this one. We've got couples already starting to fill in for 2024, and we'd love to have you on the trip. So, and the sooner you book flights, better the deal. So, anyway, thank you very much for those that tuned in, and then feel free to hit me. Just start speak up, and just let's discuss any questions you have from an audio standpoint. And you should be able to unmute yourself if you have a question and you're having trouble. And if you can't unmute yourself for some reason, let me know in the chat and I will unmute you. But
hey, Joe, this is Scott Jennings. What kind of average daytime temperature should we expect?
Scott, that is an absolutely excellent question. So I'm going to share my screen with you because I actually had a chart that I was going to share and I didn't. So it's not as hot as what people often think. So this is for Los Barriles and Baja Peninsula, and I use this same, Microsoft little chart. And in June, we're going to be there at the end of June. The average high is about 80 degrees. The record is 100. When we get into July, the record's 103, lows of 75 at night, and almost no rain. I mean, 0.35 in June, 0.73 through the entire month of July. Obviously, the rainy season comes in September. So, yeah, pretty comfortable. I've never really been uncomfortable out on the boat because you're in that open sea breeze. It's not like being stuck in a mangrove lagoon somewhere with 100% humidity and 90 degrees. It's very, very comfortable out there on the boat. So, yeah, good question, but a pleasant. Many times I've left Ellensburg, Washington, which we're in a desert here on the east side of the Cascades, and it's been over 100 degrees when I've left here and then been cooler than Mexico, ironically. So, yeah, super good question.
Hey, hey, Joe, I was wondering, I missed this, I think. How many people on a panga? Is it just one couple per panga or is it two couples per panga?
Yeah, Ed, I can't remember your wife's name. What's her
Crystal.
name? Crystal. Okay. Yeah, so like if you were booking, it would be like just you and Crystal because I think she's going to want to fish the whole week. So you would book your own panga and then that would be you the whole week. You would never share your boat.
Would it be with the same guide all week or would the guide switch off?
We would probably rotate. We've never had like a strong preference for any of the guides down there. They all do a great job and they're all well equipped. We do try to rotate a little bit just because sometimes you know how it is. If somebody doesn't catch very many fish or they didn't have as good a day, they think the guide's lost. And so they want a rotation. So we tend to default to somewhat of a rotation, but
had that, Jen?
There's also some value in staying with the same guide all week so that you know what experiences you've had together. So we play it a little bit loose. But the host reserves the right to just rotate everything. And that way people they feel like they're getting access to guides if there may be a guide that's a little bit more talented. Not been the case in this destination. Often, Ed, we're fishing within sight of most of the other boats because the way these schools of fish move around, the captains communicate. If we're in a good Dorado bite, these captains are team players. They're on the radio telling their teammates, like, hey, we're at El Sargento and we're on a mean Dorado bite. Like, you guys need to get down here. And then your teammates and your fishing buddies will show up. There's a lot we can learn about how they cooperate as a team down there as far as guys. But yeah, you and Crystal, you got your own boat all week. You're not sharing. If you book as two anglers. The sharing is when you book as a single angler, and we will dedicate one day a week to putting two couples in each boat, in which case there would be 4 in each panga, and it's pretty comfortable. It's not inconvenient. It's a lot of fun being out there with the girls for a day, fooling around, pretty serious fishing, hooking some jacks. Girls will reel them in, that kind of thing. But that would be the only time we would share the panga, is one day a week with a single angler itinerary.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You bet. All right, good questions. Bring them on, you guys. Hit me. I'm not scared. Next question is best time of year. Best time of year based on my experience and why I go every year to this spot the last week of June, because the last week of June is the time to be there. They run their operation May through early July, and then again in October down there. It's a seasonal thing. So yeah, May through July, but I will not release this week for reds. Like, this is the week we want to be there. So we're talking like prime fishing time there. So yeah, very good question. Well, I think if there's no more questions, I mean, feel free to speak up. Now's the time. Well, there's no more questions. We'll just say, yeah, hit us up with bookings. We will run a great trip for you. It's an easy trip to take. It's low risk. And for those that are still on, looks like, and yeah, a lot of familiar names on the Zoom screen here. Is if you're worried about, oh, well, what if my wife doesn't get along with the other couples or whatever? That's never happened. Everybody is there to blow off steam, go on vacation. Any couple willing to go in a group format like this, they're people persons. People who are grouchy and bitter and hard to get along with have come to the determination that it's their misery is everybody else's fault, and they don't want to be around other people. Folks that want to be on a trip in a group like this, they're always friendly, they're always kind, they're easy to get along with. We're blowing off steam, doing some fly fishing at a beautiful resort in Mexico. Everybody's easy to get along with. The other thing I'll add, as far as just being on a vacation with your spouse or partner, is if you don't want to have dinner as a big group, you don't have to have dinner as a big group. There's a fine restaurant at the resort, and you can grab a table for yourself and just have date night. If there's another couple that you've hit it off with, or that you came on the trip with, and 4 or 6 of you want to have your own table, you guys go have your own table and then have your own little private group. Nobody gets their feelings hurt, and then you can have your own time to enjoy one another and converse with one another. So it's the trip scales really well for that kind of that socialization. And couples that come as a group of 4 with just 2 anglers do really well, because then you've got your boat partner, the other anglers, the non-anglers, they have a relationship with somebody that they're going to spend time with at the resort, and that system works really well too. So anyway, great trip. I could go on and on, but if you're worried about getting along with other couples, don't worry about it. It's like everybody's there just to have a great time and super fun. So
how many people are on this trip, Jeff?
We always shoot for about 10 couples. And I think last year I had 8 couples. So I think I've taken as many as 12. So I would say like 8 to 12 couples are on the trip on average.
Okay. And will this be recorded? I would like to have my wife take a look at this presentation. Yep. Wonderful presentation, Joe. Good job.
Thanks very much. It'll be up in about 24 hours. It takes a little while for Zoom to process it. And then I'll put it up on the main schedule page. There will just be a link to the recording. You have to enter a passcode, which is super annoying. But the passcode's just right on that same screen there. Yeah, check it out in 24 hours. Just flip it on for background music, background noise when you're making dinner one night, and see if it's something you guys want to do. But I believe in the trip. I wouldn't go on it again and again and again if it wasn't, a great destination. And in my opinion, a very good and fair value. None of this is cheap, but it's a great value. The resort is one of the nicer places I've ever stayed in my life, if not the nicest. I don't want to hype it, but nobody is disappointed. It's a very, very nice place to stay. Yeah, nobody will be let down. I'll put it that way. If you're nervous about that, the accommodations are deluxe. Okay, well, I'm going to patch off for the day, you guys. Thank you for hanging on this long. We hope to get this trip filled up with a whole bunch of nice, fun-loving people that just want to go catch a few fish and have a good vacation at the same time. So my email is in the chat dialogue, and then just hit me up with any questions that you have. But it's joe@redsflyshop.com if anybody wants to follow up with any other questions. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.